Hi everyone, my name is Sarah Mari. I'm one of the librarians at Portland Public Library in Portland, Maine, and I'm here to continue reading The Vanderbeekers of 141st Street by Karina Yan Glaser. This book is published by Houghton, Mifflin, Harcourt, and we're going to pick up right where we left off, which is with chapter 18 at the beginning of the day of Tuesday, December 24th, which is also known as Christmas Eve. Jessie's eyes flew open. It took her a few moments to register her father snowing on the floor and George Washington needing the blanket draped over her. Paganini hopped circles around Papa, nudging Papa's feet with his nose, ready to start the day. Jessie put her hand on her heart and rubbed. Today was Christmas Eve. Papa emitted a powerful snore and woke himself up. "What? Grab the coats," he said, bolting upwards. He looked around confused and then saw Jessie staring down at him. "Oh, hey, sweetie. Sorry about that. Was I snoring?" "Yes, Papa." "Did I say weird things in my dreams?" "Yes, Papa." They got up, folded the blankets, and started preparing breakfast. Jessie retrieved her list of things to do for Christmas Eve dinner and examined it while listening to the sounds of her family awakening upstairs. Her stomach was full of knots as she waited for Izzy to come down. First, Lainey appeared wearing her panda coat and talking to her stuffed bunny about what presents she wanted for Christmas. Oliver stumbled into the kitchen next, his hair in disarray. Jessie felt Oliver's eyes settle on her as she pretended to review the dinner menu. "Mama's going to help you make dinner, right?" Oliver asked her. "I don't know," Jessie said, adjusting her glasses. "Probably not." "I think she should. It's Christmas Eve dinner," Oliver reminded her, perhaps unwisely. "I think you should be quiet," Jessie snapped. Papa spoke up. "Oliver, my beloved son." "Only son," Jessie grumbled under her breath. "This would be a good time for you to give your sister some space." Oliver shrugged and tried not to think too hard about what he had said wrong. He knew he would never understand. Hyacinth came down with Franz at her heels, followed by Mama's light footsteps. At last, Jessie heard the last set of familiar footfalls. Out of the corner of her eye, she watched Izza make her way into the kitchen. Izza picked up Lainey and settled her on her hip, greeting everyone except Jessie. Jessie dared to look up at her sister. "What time do you want to start cooking?" she asked. "Whenever," Izza replied, avoiding her glance as she kissed Lainey's nose and put her down on the floor. Jessie tapped her pencil against her dinner notes. She felt uncharacteristically apprehensive. "Should we split up the list? I can make the beef stew and the cheesecake. Do you want to do the roasted vegetables and the carrot cake?" "Fine. If you'd rather do the beef stew, I can do the roasted vegetables." "Whatever." Jessie hesitated. "Does that mean you want to do the beef stew, or do you want to make the roasted vegetables?" "I don't care." Izza turned from Jessie to grab a mug from the cupboard. "So should we stick with the original plan?" "Fine!" Izza whipped around and glared at Jessie. Then she turned her glare to Oliver and Hyacinth, who had been spectators to the entire exchange, their gazes bouncing back and forth. "Well," Hyacinth said, to no one in particular, "looks like Franz wants to visit the kittens in the backyard." She grabbed a snoozing Franz by the collar and dragged him outside. Oliver's delivery was equally unbelievable. "Yeah, I gotta run. Going to organize my bookshelves." He trailed off and then scurried up the stairs 2 at a time. "Listen," Mama said, one hand braced on Iz's shoulder and the other braced on Jessie's. "We can see that you two are working something out. However, 7 hungry adults and 3 hungry kids are counting on you for dinner tonight. Papa and I will take the kids down the street to help wrap gifts for the toy drive, so we will be out of your hair. Are you going to be okay? Should we think about a plan B?" "We can do it," Izzy muttered. Jessie nodded mutely. The day couldn't be over soon enough. An hour later, the Vanderbeekers' home was eerily quiet. While the rest of the family was at PS 737's school cafeteria, wrapping gifts for the toy drive, Izza and Jessie went about their dinner preparations without a word, every sound echoing through the kitchen. Jessie retrieved her beef stew ingredients mechanically. Her stomach felt squeamish and unsteady. The last time she had felt like this is when she ate the fish head stew Allegra's mom had made. "It does amazing things for your kidneys, Allegra Mom," the pediatrician had said. "Even if I throw it all up," Jessie had thought, but not said. Jessie chopped the onions, carrots, celery, and garlic, put them in a bowl, lined up her seasoning, turned the burner on, added olive oil to the pot, Threw in the vegetables, then the beef, then the broth. Stirred, waited. Isa was doing her own chopping on the kitchen counter, her knife pounding against the scarred cutting board. Potatoes, mushrooms, bell peppers, and carrots were all dumped together in a roasting pan with olive oil, salt, and pepper. Isa set the oven to 400 degrees and then shoved the roasting pan inside and let the oven door bang closed. Then she stomped downstairs to the basement. Soon after, Jessie heard the sounds of Isa's bow striking her violin in a moody rendition of La Folia. Jessie collapsed onto a kitchen stool, arms crossed on the counter, head buried in her arms. She stayed there unmoving while steam rattled the lid on the soup pot up and down, up and down. Hyacinth was the first one out of this school when the Vanderbeekers were done with gift wrapping. The second she got home, she leashed up Franz and was back outside before her family had even made it inside. "Franz and I are going to go hang out in the backyard. Okay, see you later, bye," Hyacinth blurted out. No one questioned her, even though it was 35 degrees and the trees lining the sidewalks bent against the strain of the wind. "Franz, listen up. It's time for our secret spy mission." First, they stopped by the alley, where Papa kept the gray trash cans and the blue recycling bins. Hyacinth sifted through a stack of boxes Mama had deemed too small to be useful for the move. After choosing the perfect one, Hyacinth and Franz made their way to the hydrangea bush at the corner of the backyard, just beyond the big oak. Underneath the bush was a family of cats. Hyacinth had been feeding the mama, a sleek black cat she had named Francesca Priscilla Arlington, for the last 2 months, and had salvaged a wooden cabinet abandoned on the sidewalk for her to live in after she gave birth to her litter 6 weeks ago. The cabinet was lined with old fuzzy blankets Hyacinth had procured from Miss Josie and Mr. Jeep. Franz tilted his head and one ear twitched. He stuck his face in the cabinet and nuzzled the 3 kittens, who responded by battling his nose playfully. Hyacinth stroked Francesca Priscilla Arlington and leaned down to kiss her head. For a moment, Hyacinth's resolve faltered. But then, as if her father were right next to her whispering in her ear, Hyacinth remembered something. Until one has loved an animal, a part of one's soul remains unawakened. Hyacinth took a deep breath and then lifted the black kitten with a smudge of white fur on her paws out of the cabinet. "We're going to take real good care of your baby," Hyacinth whispered to Francesca Priscilla Arlington. She placed the kitten in a box, removed her own scarf, a rainbow-colored piece that she had knitted herself, and tucked it around the kitten. Kitten and box in hand, Hyacinth led the way out of the alley and back up the brownstones' front stairs. She entered the first-floor hallway, crept along the walls on a tiptoe, and looped the end of Franz's leash to the doorknob that led to their apartment. She kissed Franz on his cold nose. "You must be very, very quiet," she whispered to him. Franz looked into her hazel eyes, and Hyacinth knew in her soul that he understood the importance of the moment. Hyacinth commenced the final stage of her super spy mission, up to the 3rd floor with the box in her hand. Her hands shook when she laid the box in front of the Biederman's door. She clenched a trembling hand into a fist, paused only slightly, and then bang on the door. Down 2 flights of stairs she flew before grabbing Franz's lead off the door handle and disappearing into her apartment. The sound of her pounding heart so filled her ears that she couldn't tell whether the door on the 3rd floor had opened or not. Chapter 19. The entire Vanderbeeker family was sprawled around the living room when Papa's cell phone rang. He answered it, and the kids abruptly quieted when they heard him say, "Hello, Mr. Biederman, how are you?" There was a pause, then, "Oh, really? The last 2 mornings? I had no idea." Papa cast a "you have a lot of explaining to do" look in the kids' direction, while Mama leaned in close to the phone. The Vanderbeekers kids gave each other uneasy glances before backing up in the direction of the stairs. "I'm very surprised," Papa continued, glaring at his kids. "That doesn't sound like them." "You saw them out your window. I see. I will definitely talk with them. That's completely unacceptable, and I'm very sorry." Papa's glare at his retreating children intensified as he pointed one stern finger at them and then to a spot at the ground 1 foot away from him. "I'm very sorry, Mr. Biederman. The sudden move has been very hard on them. I'm sure you can understand that." The kids arrived at the designated spot in front of Papa and stared at the ground. "Yes, of course. We'll be out by December 31st, maybe earlier. Again, I'm sorry, Mr. Biederman. I hope you have a happy Papa stopped and looked at the phone screen. "A man just hung up on me," Papa muttered. He set his phone on top of a side table and then turned slowly to face the kids. "Anything you want to tell me?" Papa asked, looking at each of his kids. no one said anything. That was Mr. Biederman. He told me about a petition that you kids put together. He's very, very upset. Isa twisted her fingers together. Jessie looked straight ahead at a crack in the brownstone wall. Oliver's eyes darted to each of his siblings in a panic. Hyacinth's eyes filled with tears as she reached down to stroke Franz's ears. Lainey was the only one looking up at Papa, with glum brown eyes. Mr. Biederman is furious, not only about the petition, but because someone, and from the way he described her, it sounds like it might be your friend Allegra, figured out his phone number and circulated it through the neighborhood. The twins grimaced while Papa continued. People have been calling him all day to demand that he renew our lease. He had to disconnect his phone. Hyacinth held her breath, waiting for Papa to bring up the kitten, but he didn't. Oliver spoke up. We thought it would encourage him to let us stay if he knew how many people loved us in the neighborhood. I know you kids love the brownstone. Your mama and I love it too, but you cannot do things like this. It's hurtful to Mr. Biederman, and I expect you all to apologize. You will each write him a note and slide it under his door. Please do not disturb him any more. The petition was my idea, Isa said, a flush covering her cheeks. We didn't know Allegra would have people call him, she added quickly. I just wanted to show the Biederman how important this place was to us. I can see how the petition was wrong. I'm sorry. I'm really, really sorry. Isa looked at her siblings. Hyacinth's face was pale. Lainey was openly crying. Jessie was yanking at a loose thread on her t-shirt, and Oliver was grinding the toe of his sneaker into the wooden floor. Isa took a deep breath. We have something else to tell you, Isa said. Oliver looked at her in a panic and shook his head briskly. We did something else, Isa said, glancing away from him. Papa dropped his head as if he couldn't handle more bad news. Mama sighed and crossed her arms over her chest. We sent away a man who came to look at our apartment, Isa said in a whisper. I told him he was walking in the wrong direction, Oliver jumped in, but I didn't feel good about it. There was a long pause while Papa and Mama communicated with their eyes. This is a fine mess, Papa finally said. Not only are you getting extra chores the next week, but you will each write a letter of apology to Mr. Biederman, and you will also confess what you did with the prospective tenant, in person. But Papa, protested Jessie. No excuses, Mama said. We're disappointed in you. Okay, Papa, said Isa, her voice trembling. I'll make sure we apologize, right? She felt the weight of failure hanging heavy on her. Failure to convince the Biederman that they were worth keeping. Failing to hold on to the house. Failing her parents. Failing. Papa finally broke the silence. I know this has been hard on you kids. I wish I could have... He paused and shook his head, and instead of finishing his sentence, he opened his arms, and Isa fell into him, sobs pouring out of her. After a moment, the other kids and Mama gathered in, mourning all the things that they could not hold on to. The Vanderbeekers kids headed upstairs to Isa and Jessie's bedroom, where the only sound was the rattle of the windows in their frame from the winter winds. Isa still refused to look at or speak to Jessie. Hyacinth helped Lainey write, I'm sorry, love, Lainey, before writing her own apology letter. Jessie watched Isa slip the CD that she had made for the Biederman into an envelope. When everyone was done, they trudged upstairs. Hyacinth was relieved to see that the kitten and the box were gone. The Vanderbeekers kids took turns sliding their letters of apology under the door. Oliver pushed through Mr. Rochester's business card last. A sticky note was attached to the card with a hasty scribble on it that said, he's the right guy for the brownstone. Who's ready for Christmas? Auntie Harrigan and Uncle Arthur were waiting in the living room with huge smiles, tinsel draped around their necks, and Santa hats on their head when the Vanderbeekers arrived from their trip to the Biederman's apartment. Auntie Harrigan had altered her hair again. This time it was dyed bright red and cut super short and spiky. Uncle Arthur had grown a grizzly beard and was wearing plaid flannel work shirt with paint-splattered jeans. They were holding piles of presents, all wrapped decadently in striped paper and abundant ribbons. The kids tried their best to look happy. I must admit, said Auntie Harrigan, as she pulled the kids in for a hug, I'm not used to such a glum reception when you kids see me. Did I forget someone's birthday? Miss an important dance concert or basketball game? The kids shook their head, and then, one by one, they told her the story of the Biederman and the move. Auntie Harrigan, who had heard about their impending move from Papa, sat herself down on a cardboard box full of packed books and listened to every word. After the kids finished, there was a prolonged period of silence while Auntie Harrigan chewed on her lips, deep in thought. The kids watched her, hoping she might have the perfect solution for them. Finally, Auntie Harrigan sighed. "I'm sorry, kids. I wish I knew how to help you. But I'm very, very proud of you. I think those nice things you did for Mr. Biederman were meaningful to him, even if it doesn't seem like it." The kids nodded, unbelieving. Auntie Harrigan stood up and clapped her hands. "If it's going to be the last Christmas Eve dinner here, we better make it really great. Your mom told me that you ladies," she smiled at the twins, "are cooking for us tonight. What a treat." Oliver mimed gagging motions that everyone ignored. The twins went back to dinner preparations while Auntie Harrigan taught the other kids how to draw armadillos. Franz, excited about the visitors and the general chaotic state of the apartment, could not keep still. After he drooled on her drawing multiple times, Lainey took charge. "Franz, come," she said sternly, jabbing her finger at the floor next to her. Franz ignored her. He only answered a hyacinth. Paganini, however, bolted from his shoebox and skidded to a stop at Lainey's feet. "Good boy," Lainey said to her bunny, thrilled. Auntie Harrigan's jaw dropped. "Does that bunny know commands?" Oliver scoffed. "That bunny, his brain is the size of an acorn." Lainey looked like she was either going to protest or burst into tears, but she was safe from both when Mama entered the living room with an announcement. "I just got off the phone with Miss Josie," Mama called out. "Change of plans. We're going to gather in their apartment for dinner. We thought it would be easier given..." Mama gestured at the mess of boxes stacked in unstable piles throughout the living room. Auntie Harrigan accompanied Mama to the second floor to help set up, while Papa and Uncle Arthur carried up a long folding table, followed by a dozen folding chairs. Lanny put Paganini in his carrier, detained only briefly by Mama, who unsuccessfully tried to make a case that Paganini would be more comfortable at home. The twins went to their room to change clothes. When Uncle Arthur came down to retrieve more chairs, he caught Oliver examining the food. Oliver knew that Uncle Arthur was referring to Oliver's running tally of the twins' edible versus inedible meals. The twins were currently at 43% success rate. "I'm scared to try it," Oliver replied, poking at a piece of blackened vegetable. How bad could it be? Come on. When I was little, your grandma made us eat fried rabbit livers with pepper jelly. You kids have it easy. We got blackened vegetables on the good day." Oliver dipped the ladle in the beef stew. "I won't tell Lanny and Hyacinth that you're a rabbit killer if you eat this bite of stew, and no spitting it out." He held the ladle up to his uncle. "Double dog dare." "Ha!" Uncle Arthur stopped. "Easiest dare ever." He took the ladle from Oliver and tipped it into his mouth. There was a pause as his mouth adjusted to the taste, and then he sprinted to the sink and spit it out. "Salty! Need water!" he gasped, gulping water directly from the faucet spout. When he recovered, he turned to Oliver. "You win." "Least the bread is from Castleman," Oliver offered. "Bread and water for dinner," Uncle Arthur said. How Dickensian. So much for their last Christmas in the brownstone. That is where we're going to stop today. We'll pick up tomorrow with chapter 20. We're getting quite close to the end with only 2 days left. We've been reading The Vanderbeekers of 141st Street. This book is by Karina Yan Glaser, and it is published by Houghton, Mifflin, Harcourt. My name is Sarah Mari. I'm one of the librarians at Portland Public Library in Portland, Maine. Thank you for listening, and I hope to see you again soon.